You're about to make one of the biggest decisions of your life. And the hardest part isn't the paperwork or the numbers. It's knowing who you can actually trust when things get complicated. In this episode, I'm joined by William Koeadatich of Crown Home Mortgage, and we're talking about what real service actually looks like inside a North Jersey real estate transaction. The kind that shows up when timelines tighten, emotions run high, and there's no room for shortcuts. If you've ever wondered why some deals close without a hitch while others get saved, sometimes at the 11th hour, this conversation is for you. All right, well, thank you for joining me. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you.
Tell me what drew you to this business and what kept you so passionate about it.
Yeah, so believe it or not, there was actually a family member of mine who was in the mortgage business for 15 years before I got into it, and I always wondered what he did. Knew he was really good at it. Always had a lot of energy, made good money, was great with people. And one day I was actually living with him at the time, and somebody on his team ended up just quitting and going to another company, which does happen in this business.
Right.
And I remember him coming home and he was really upset, and it was a younger guy that worked for him and stuff that I was kind of always like, oh, I could do that. And then literally it was like the gates opened, right? So he comes home and he's like crushed and he's like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. I left my team and I taught him the whole business and taught him how to do everything. And he got really good at it. And now he just left, right? And I was like, I literally saw these doors open it was like in a TV show where it's like, ah.
It was the right time. It was perfect opportunity.
And it was like a Friday, because why would anyone quit during the week? They always quit on a Friday, right? So ended up going up to him and I was like, you know what? I can do what he did. I want the opportunity. And he's like, all right, well, you start Monday. And at the time I was still in college and was going to be a police officer. So was still doing that, but I could do this on the side. I can work with school and all that stuff. And that's what got me in the business. And kind of through learning everything and getting licensed and all that stuff, kind of what's kept me here is I still can help people like I wanted to with being a police officer. That was what always drew me to, I can make a difference and I can help people and be involved in their lives and do all this stuff. And this business still gives us that, right? Sometimes we don't think about it that way because, we're very, a lot of transactions come in and go and we kind of forget about people here and there. And we try not to, but when you really look into it and the relationships you build, you really do make a difference in people's lives, and that's always what has kept me here, and that's why every deal matters type thing. And I know that's cliche and everyone says it, but we actually, the way that I look at the business is, that reason you're helping people, and when you really dumb it down to that level, the rest falls in place. So.
And everyone says it, but does everybody mean it? I think maybe they think that they mean it on the surface, but deep down inside, what does that entail? Do they really know what they're saying?
Well, yeah, and I think when someone asks themselves that question, they might be able to give the answer well, of course I do. It's all right, well, if that person's transaction doesn't go well, do you go home and sleep at night? Because I know I don't. If I have something going on or someone has a moving truck coming on Friday and something's not ready to go, or their kids are getting ready for school, and they're not in the new house yet, or whatever the deal is, I know that I'm personally affected by it because of the level of care that I have. And bless the people that can turn that off and just go home and just be like, oh, their transaction's not closing. But I think we're just wired different, because I know for a fact, you wouldn't be able to go home and just be like, oh, if it figures itself out, it will. We don't have that attitude. Our attitude is we will figure it out, but let's continue to work on it, not just turn it off. And yes, we all have personal lives, and work and family and stuff does separate. But when something is blowing up like that, because we've been thrown many curveballs in this business, that's why we love it at the same time.
Right.
We can't just be like, oh, you know what, you'll kind of figure it out, or hey, if it doesn't work out, maybe it's the next one. It's no, we need to get this done for them.
I actually had an agent many years ago say to me something to the effect of, it's just business, get over it, move on. And I was like, oh my gosh, no, that's not the way I do business. And I was a fledgling at the time, but I'm like, that just doesn't feel right to me. So no, it's all about the relationships.
Well, especially
and the
with
people
clients.
That we serve.
Yeah, right? Let's say if you're working with another real estate agent on the listing side or the buying side, and you guys don't get along for whatever reason, or they rub you the wrong way, at that point, yes, it's just business, you move on, right? But when it comes to our clients and the fact that we don't look at it hey, it's just this transaction, once they close, hey, they may not move for 15 years and we just let them be, people like that could just say it's just business, but you and I don't look at it that way, right? We want to follow up and make sure they're okay. How's the family doing? Because one, that's what you should do. And two, obviously we're built on referrals, right? Like no one's stupid at the end of the day, but if you farm that past business and they liked you enough and saw the level of care, you can get more business. Right. So that's why it's never just quote unquote business for us. It's more, like this is a lifelong relationship.
Right.
So.
And even past the business aspect of it, it's like we've spent so much time with those people.
Yep.
And we have gotten personal with them because it is a very deeply personal experience.
Yeah.
How do you just walk away like when it's over? Those relationships are like forever, in my opinion.
That's the hard part about the business too, because like I recently just had a closing and me, the realtor, and the client, like we're talking every single day in a group text, right? Because long story short, we had a situation come up with the house itself and, it was a condo and now it became non-warrantable and all these things came up that no one expected, right? And we worked through it and we got her closed and she was super happy, but now it's kind of like, oh, now you're just like gone, and obviously we'll follow up with them and stuff, but it's, you get so used to communicating, especially if they're actively looking for places and, like for you, like you're going to see them every single weekend. If you're showing them a house on a Friday, a Saturday, a Sunday, and then they're calling me to get updated numbers and pre-approvals and all that stuff, like you constantly have this flow and then they close and like you're super excited for them. And then it's kind of just like, oh,
Aww.
yeah. It's like it being in school, right? When you have like your favorite teacher and then you like get out of that grade or you graduate and it's kind of like, well, you're not leaving, like you're still there, but like we just won't,
you
talk
don't
as
see
much
them anymore.
Yeah.
I know, but we definitely make a very strong effort to continue, the conversation and to continue the relationship.
Yep.
So, Will, tell me about a client experience that you've had, something that really stands out that kind of shows the way, you service your clients, something that maybe has a wow factor.
Yeah, so this is I don't want to say one of my first loans that I ever did, but one that I literally will never forget. I want to say was in the first year that I was in the business. But this couple comes to me and they need to buy a house, right? Like normal, first time home buyers. They got to be out of the house they're in. And, I start asking questions and, we run numbers and they're like, all right, this is the style house we want. And we need multiple bedrooms and we want this payment, all that stuff. It all makes sense. It all works out. So I go to run their information and unfortunately the person who was going to go on the loan's credit was too low. Didn't work. Mm-hmm. And then the spouse's credit, the other one did work, but they had too much debt in their name, right?
Oh.
So now like both people can't work, like it doesn't work. And I'm like, unfortunately, right now the loan won't go through. We can't pre-approve you, but maybe there's a way we can kind of look through it together and whatnot. And they're like, well, Will, you have to make this happen. And then they went into their story. And the story was, right now it was a husband and wife and they have a son. Well, now they have a kid they're actually adopting through a family member, like something happened in the family and, the kid was either going to go to the state, unfortunately, through DIFAS, or they gave them the opportunity to adopt. But to adopt, you have to have your own, the kid has to have its own, bedroom and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So they're like, Will, we need to buy this 3-bedroom because of this situation and we're on a time crunch. So that's where like, it becomes super personal at that point. You're like, all right, well, what, we're going to figure it out. And I remember, we went through it and what actually happened was we were able to get one of their car loans they had, bring it back to the dealer, return the lease, put it into her name instead of his. Now his debt to income ratio was better. Then I was able to, really squeeze out overtime and all this stuff. And we just get the loan to work. And I remember like how happy they were. They were like, hey, we figured out a way. Let's try this. And that day they brought the car back to the dealership. They did whatever they had to do to get it done. And we were able to close 30 days later. And still to this day that the new girl now lives with them still.
Oh my gosh, that is really a life alteration right there.
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
insane.
Yep.
When they told you that story, how could you just walk away and say, sorry?
Well,
like,
exactly.
No.
And still to this day, like if someone's loan doesn't work, we always try to figure out a way why and stuff. But obviously, it's easy to say like, hey, work on your credit or hey, if you did this and this. But when you're on a time crunch, there's really not a lot you can do. And we were able to figure it out. But I still remember, I remember them closing and they actually got a candle made for me that had like their family picture from closing
They're
with the 2 kids.
never going to forget you.
Never. And that must have been probably 8 or 9 years ago at this point. And that still is the story that if anyone asks me like, oh, what's this one loan that closed that was this or that? And
That's the
obviously
one.
there's a lot that close and mean a lot, but that one to me will always stand out the most.
Right.
So,
Well, this does not even compare, but recently we were working with a client
mm-hmm.
who they were pre-approved by someone else, or so they thought they were. And then when it came down to it, they found out that they couldn't afford the house that they wanted because all of a sudden they were not approved for that exact amount that they thought they were.
Yep.
And I'm like, you guys, you have to talk to Will. I'm like, because this just sounds fishy. And in that case, you stepped up as well. But you literally just pre-approved them, and you were like, they're so fine.
Yep.
I don't know what that lender's talking about. I mean, there are a lot of great lenders out there, but I love to send my clients to you, and even if they have been pre-approved by someone else, because people, everyone knows somebody in the business, right? Like everyone knows a realtor. And I'm like, what do you mean you're not approved? Like, I know their work history, I know their employment history, I know who they are, as people, as humans, as professionals. You can't tell me they're not approved for that.
Exactly.
And like, they came to you and you really didn't do anything except approve
nothing
them.
special.
But my point is, like, there's so much that you can do.
Yep.
And people don't realize it.
Exactly.
Don't just go with, your first opinion.
Well, and then sometimes we'll look at it and then I'm kind of sitting there and I'm like, there's got to be something I'm missing, because why didn't someone see it this way? But a lot of times in this business, like, even if someone does close a decent amount of business and stuff, like, maybe they get too busy and they overlook stuff, or they calculate stuff wrong, or they're just, not into it, right? Because it's a sales job, and, maybe sometimes they don't give their best effort to that client, and the client just feels like that's the only answer. And then they finally talk to someone else like myself, and then we're able to open, a whole new world to them and say, like, hey, no, actually it does work. And now you go right under contract.
Right. But how many times do they feel like it's the only answer, and then they just kind of like take a step back?
Yep. So, yeah, no, but then you get the other people that, you do help out and then they qualify, but then they want to kind of shop around and stuff, which you completely get. So it's kind of, pros and cons to it. But, I just think that, if you get told no, you should definitely, especially in this business, go get a second opinion.
Right.
So.
What do you believe to be outstanding mortgage service?
Yeah. So this was, this is what separates the people in this business. Because to me, anybody can, we all use the same guidelines, right? Every bank has to use the same guidelines. Like, obviously there's some niche products there that don't use the traditional way, but if we go traditional way, every bank's the same, right? There might be a few differences here and there, but the grand scheme of this job, you could do it at any bank. Everything's the same, right? Kind of, to me, what makes me different and what I always lean on, and I think you see it in my reviews and stuff, is, when I talk to the client, it's, every client gets treated the same, right? Whether you come to me and you're getting an $80,000 loan or you're borrowing $1 million, to me, you get the same service, right? That's me sitting down with you in the beginning, being your consultant. I want to know how much, I'm going to tell you how much you qualify for per month, but I also want to know how much are you comfortable spending? All because a bank says, yeah, you can have a $7,000 a month mortgage. You're like, I would never in a million years will. I have, I want to go away on vacation. I want to save up for retirement. I want to do this or that. And that's where, when I talk to them, maybe I, curate it to $3,500 a month. Great. Here's what it gets you, right? And going through that piece with them and being, an advisor and a consultant to them is the difference. Where when they call an 800 number like a Quicken Loans or a Loan Depot or something like that, they're not going to get that level of service. It's going to be, oh, here's what the bank approved you for, and then they give you the letter and you start shopping them, and little do they know they don't want a payment that comes with the house, right? So that's the beginning stages for me, is kind of setting the proper expectations by hearing their wants and needs, and then filling that with, all right, well, now you're going to look for this style house, and here's what closing costs look like, right? It's something that's it's every transaction has closing costs, but a lot of lenders don't go through it, right? And I think the reason that is because it's an extra cost. There's a good 10, 15 minutes of explaining things, and when you tell somebody, hey, you could buy a house with 5% down, which could be $20,000, but you need another $15,000 for closing costs, that might be a hard conversation to have. But you're going to have it at some point, right? So when I sit down with the client and I find out their wants and needs, I go through all the numbers with them. I like to set the expectation, so when you start shopping them, they already know the numbers I told them aren't going to change, right? Now, they may fluctuate if the houses are different and stuff, but the initial start, that's what I do, right? Then from there, when they start to shop with you, I always tell my clients, it's like going to buy a car, right? If you go and buy a car tomorrow, 99% of the time you're going to walk in, the dealer's going to be like, what kind of car you want? Oh, great. Let's go test drive it. Oh, let's go through this. And you fall in love with all the bells and whistles and the heated seats and everything.
And then
you talk payment, right? And the payment's never what it is online, no matter what, mathematician you think you are and everything. Like there's registration fees, taxes, insurance, all this stuff they add in, and the payment changes. What I do, and I tell the clients this exactly, because most people have bought a car in their life, I say, we're not doing that. What we're going to do is before you can line up 5 houses you want to see with Betty this Saturday, you're going to send them to me first. I'm going to give you all of the numbers for them so you can fall in love with it financially before you walk into that house and you can picture a family, a barbecue, all this stuff. I'd rather give you the numbers up front. You swallow the pill if it's a little bit out of your range that you want to be in. You go see the house knowing the numbers, right? One, it makes it easier because if you don't like the numbers, you don't go fall in love with it. But 2, if you really love it and you call me Saturday night, you're going to be like, Will, we know the numbers are a little bit higher, but we're ready to go for it, versus like, oh, well, that's depressing. And now every house they're going to go see, they're going to compare it to 123 Main Street that had, the sun patio, that had this, that had that, Betty, but no house is like that. I wish we could just go for it. And then it's depressing, right? It's just like if you were to, once again, test drive, the car that had the top of the line, every feature in it, and then you realize you don't want the payment, and then you go get the base model that just doesn't do what the other one did. You're going to remember that every time you get in that car and start it, right?
Absolutely.
So
absolutely. And not only all that, but that makes my job so much easier.
Exactly.
Because let's face it, I mean, it's not an easy job. There's different things coming at us all the time.
Yep.
You know that. But when I have had a client talk to you and you've gone through that whole financial process, they know exactly where they stand, and we know exactly what they can afford, and not just what they can afford, but what they are comfortable with, which makes such a huge big difference because people don't want to be like house poor.
Exactly.
They don't want all of their money going into their house. And I feel like when they're pre-approved, yeah, maybe they can afford it, but is everything else that life throws at them taken into consideration when they're pre-approved? I know with you, all of that is covered.
Well, yeah, because what if they tell me like, yeah, well, these are incomes right now, but in 2 years after we buy the house, we want to start a family and I don't want her to work. This is what we're comfortable spending, right? It's those different levels of questions that I ask that kind of set the difference up. So that's kind of, obviously when they get pre-approved, they start looking for the house. Then once they're actually under contract, that's where, not only do they go through the process and it'll be, smooth and seamless, but they get milestone updates. I update the buyer's agent. I update the listing agent. I keep everyone in the loop.
Yes.
So that, by the time we get to closing, one, I set the expectation in the beginning. This is how the process is going to run now that you're under contract. I tell the listing agent the same thing. I obviously tell you because you know it for the years that we've been together and stuff where, once everyone sees that play out and then they close, it's like the full package. Like, wow, Will did this from step 1, step 2, and now that we closed, great. And then I'm going to keep in touch with them 30, 60, 90 days after closing, making sure they have no questions and stuff. To me, that's the full level of service where I know for a fact a lot of people don't do that.
Right,
So,
right. And, I have to agree because I see the level of care that you provide in your communications with me. And I know that the clients are getting that as well.
yep.
Awesome.
Exactly.
So what is the one thing that you do repeatedly that might go unnoticed, but you're like, I'm doing this anyway because it's huge in the end and it makes a difference?
Yeah, what I think a lot of people don't know is like there's a lot of stuff that gets done in the background of mortgages, whether you're the most qualified person or your loan's a little rocky and stuff. But me and my team, when your file does come to us, and let's say it goes through underwriting and it gets approved, a lot of banks that are so automated and robotic or, they throw everything on the client's lap. If the client truly saw how much stuff has to get done for their loan, and the best way to say it is if you ever looked at an initial loan approval, there could be 25 items on that list, right? Now, when I go through that with my team, we may send 4 things to the client and say, hey, get us this stuff. We're going to take care of the other 21, right? That stuff I think kind of goes unnoticed, but at the end of the day, that's just the level of service that I provide that makes me different, where the last thing I would ever want to do is throw all of this on the client and be like, hey, figure this out, right? Because then what am I getting paid to do, or why are my services being needed? But some banks do that. They throw it back on the client and they say, hey, satisfy all these conditions from the underwriter. And they'll be like, I don't know what this is. I don't do this every day. I buy a house once every, 5-10 years.
Right.
Right. So that's the one thing that kind of goes unnoticed, but I think that's also what separates us. And by the end of it, when clients leave a review and they're like, oh, it was actually very easy to buy a house versus, oh, my friend said this process is going to be awful and they're going to keep coming back to me. Underwriting's going to keep coming back and ask for stuff.
Asking for more information, yeah.
Where ours doesn't, because we know why they're asking for it, right? Instead of the client being the one that has to come up with the answers, I tell the client, hey, here's what I need from you, whether it's a letter of explanation, whatever it could be. I come to you and say, hey, this is what they're looking for, provide this, so that by the time I get it back, I know the underwriter's going to be fine with it. Versus like, oh, let's see what they say, and then we throw it on the underwriter's lap, and they're like, no, it's wrong, it needs to state X, Y, and Z, whatever the case is. So I think that's one thing that kind of goes unnoticed, and I almost prefer it to be that way, right? Like, I never want to, I guess, ever have the client feel stressed. Now, some of them, we'll send the copy of the approval anyway, and they'll open that instead of reading our email, and they'll be like, Will, why is there 25 items on here? And we'll say to them, hey, no, we already took care of those. The one, and then we put in the email, like, hey, just finish 1, 2, and 3. I got the rest. And then they're like,
okay.
Oh, wow, Will, thank you so much. So
what would those items entail? What would they include?
Yeah, so
just
it could
a few
be
examples.
Yeah, so it could be one. The big thing is shopping for home insurance, and it sounds like such an easy, mundane thing to do, but most people have shopped for car insurance in their life. But what do? We get car insurance, and unless we're getting a new car, we never call our car insurance again, right? And most of it's automated. You throw a VIN number in, it gives you the coverage. Well, when you have a house, it's a lot different. It's, well, how far is it to the nearest fire hydrant? How many rooms, square footage, what style roof, what style siding? All these questions where I can take that out of their hands, shop home insurance, with a couple agents that I know. I can share the appraisal with them and kind of go through everything. So they can just sit back and go look at the quotes, right?
Okay, wow.
Because I still want them to make the decision, but I want to be... I'll take that out of their hands because maybe it saves them a 45-minute call with, one insurance company that ultimately, maybe doesn't give them the best quote or maybe has too much coverage. I'd rather just give them quotes. Here, go through who you guys want to choose. I already have it all taken care of, right?
That's amazing.
So that's one thing. The other thing that does come up a lot in this business is a lot of letter of explanations, right? Because getting a mortgage, and you got to think of it like a 30-year loan, there's a lot of storytelling to it. Like why should a bank lend you $750,000 in trust, you're going to pay it back? Sometimes that story is very easy because let's say you've had a great job for 30 years and your income's always been solid. We know you're going to pay it back. You have good credit. But what happens when it's a 600 credit score borrower? They just started a new job a month ago and the underwriter wants to know, why should I trust you?
Right.
Right? Maybe the client doesn't know the best answer for that, right? But I can call them and guide them in the right direction. And they're like, well, remember you told me you left your last 4 jobs after a few months because you kept getting a better opportunity, better pay. It was closer to home. And next thing you know, I kind of give them that information again and they know what to put on the letter.
Right.
Right.
Because this can be so overwhelming for buyers.
Yep.
So sometimes they need that little, guidance, even though they know they have the answer, but their brain is like...
Yeah, because the other thing is, it's easy for me to kind of be like, oh, well, your loan's approved, here's the stuff. But in the background, right, they're packing up stuff in their current living situation. They're going through attorneys for inspection things. They're, still living their normal life, which everyone has a job, everyone has a family, everyone has all this stuff that they're going through. They just added buying a house on top of that.
Right, which is insane.
And they don't go through it at all, right? And meanwhile, they got friends and family in their ears saying, watch out for this, watch out for that. And, they're just very overwhelmed, right? So once again, if I could just ease their mind by doing that, plus, there's a lot of verifications that get done through like the IRS to make sure you file taxes and W-2s and verifications through your employer to show your pay stubs are real. Like all this stuff, once again, that gets done in the background that you don't even know when you work with me, that just know it's going to get done and you're going to have very small tasks to complete and we'll get you the house.
Right, right. Awesome. So tell me, and I know this from experience, but just so that we can share that with everyone who's watching or listening, when you're working with a realtor, what's your approach to collaboration, and how does that help the client?
Yeah, so realtors are my biggest part of my business. Now, I know people say like, hey, don't put, all your eggs in one basket. And, I do get deals and stuff from past clients and other sources as well. But my biggest one is always realtors. Why? I'm very relationship driven. So with me, when I go to collaborate with a realtor, I want to, make sure, that you do good by your clients, right? You do good business for yourself and for the clients. But I want to make sure that we jive well together, right? That we're going to have a good, good business relationship and stuff. Because in my personal experience, the clients can always tell if like the realtor and the lender aren't on the same page, right? So for example, if I know a client's working with you, I know the things you're telling them. I know because how long you've been in the business, know how you operate, so that when they call me, I can back it all up, right? You don't have to be the best agent in the country, but you're doing some business. You take it serious, and you do right by people, right? Because to me, I know that's what I'm going to do on my side. And the last thing I want to do is ever partner with somebody that gives a bad reputation, a bad taste in the mouth to the client, and maybe pushes them to do something they don't want to do, or whatever.
And how many times have we worked together in a situation where, I mean, you know it because I give you the feedback, but my clients are always like, we love Will. We love Will. And recently we worked with a buyer that closed in Wayne.
Yep.
And I introduced her to you. And at the end, she was like, what a great team we had. Yep. There's something about working with other professionals that you know how they work.
Yep.
And they're going to get the job done.
Well, yeah,
and you're all on the same page. There's nothing like it.
Well, yeah, because you could say to your client, like, listen, you're going to go under contract. We get this offer accepted. Blah, blah, blah. Attorney's going to step in. This is what they do. Then at that point, Will takes the ball, and then he's going to do this while we set up my, the inspection with my inspector. And like, nobody wants to go into this. One, that's already scary because they're buying, this huge, biggest investment of their life. But when you like work with someone like you, and then they all of a sudden feel like they're literally being held, right? Like, all right, here's what's going to happen. You're going to work with this group of people, and everything happens the way it's supposed to, and you close. It's such a sigh of relief for them. One, it makes my life easier, your life easier, their life easier.
And yet some clients still are like, well, I have this person already, or I have that person already. And I'm always like, oh no, because yes, you are welcome to use anyone that you would like to use. However, there's always that big however. If you work with my team, this is how we get it done.
Yep.
And it's always a smooth experience that way.
Yep, because once I've had it several times where people are like, "Oh, I have a divorce attorney. I'm just going to use him," and I'm like,
"Ouch!"
He doesn't do real estate. And then they're like, "No, I want to use him." And then the first time you go to call him, and he's in court all day, and he's not going to return your call till Thursday because when he's not in court, and then he doesn't know what an addendum is, and he doesn't know this or that, then that's where you and I step in, and we can't give legal advice, but at the same time, we have to guide people and say, "This is why you need to use a real estate attorney."
Exactly. So if you had to sum up your client service philosophy all in one sentence, Will, what would it be?
So I would say kind of my philosophy is always do right by the client and treat every client the same, right? And kind of touching on the stories and stuff that we told, that's always been my philosophy. And I kind of said in the beginning, but like whether you're buying an $80,000 house or $1 million house, whatever, the case may be, always treat people the same because you don't know. That person's going to tell a bunch of people about their experience, no matter what size the loan is, what kind of program it is, credit score, they're going to tell people they're buying a house, right? It's exciting. Everyone in the world tells everyone when they buy a car, they're really going to tell everybody when they buy a house.
Yes.
And I remember one of my first transactions I did, I had to drive an hour to a real estate office to sit with this client because she didn't do stuff over the phone and she wasn't good with technology. She was 80 years old, buying a house, and her loan amount was literally $80,000. Right?
Wow.
Her name was Ginger. Like I remember it to a T. And went and sat with her, and everything was in person, and it obviously took longer than it was supposed to and stuff, just because we always had to meet up and everything. But to me, it could have been looked at like, oh, it's an $80,000 loan. That's how some people could look at it. I looked at it as here's this 70-something-year-old woman who's on her own because her husband passed away. She's scared to buy the next place, but she's tired of renting. She wants to be in a 55 and older community. Things are easier for her. She had to sell her house. I'm helping her kind of on that like last chapter, right? She's going to move into this place. It's probably going to be the last place she lives in. And, she's just wanted somebody to guide her through that because guess what? Her husband always did it. Now he's not here. Now what do I do? Right? And numbers were scary for her. And like, she didn't want to feel like she was being taken advantage of. So me meeting with her in person, especially in the beginning of my career, was something that always stuck with me because we closed on it. She was super happy. Like she understood everything. And that just always stuck with me.
Always do the right thing and treat everyone equally.
Yes.
And I usually say treat every client like $1 million client, whether they're buying a shack or a mansion. And not only does that come back to you tenfold, but it's here in your heart. It feels amazing.
Yeah.
Tell me where our listeners, our viewers can find you.
Yes. So the easiest way is people can always text or call me. And that number is 973-954-1497. Or they can go right to my website, which is will.crown, which is CROWN for Nancy, H for Henry, M for Mary.com.
If this conversation resonated with you, I hope it reminded you of one simple truth. Who you move with matters. Real estate isn't just about rates, timelines, or paperwork. It's about people, pressure, and moments that don't always go according to plan. And when things get complicated, the right team doesn't disappear. They lean in. If you're navigating a move, thinking about buying or selling, or even just trying to make sense of your next steps, you don't have to figure it out all alone today. You just need people in your corner who treat your situation with care, honesty, and follow through. Thank you for spending this time with us. I'm Betty Russo, and this is Living the North Jersey Lifestyle. I'll see you next time.